Life Below Zero fans will recognize Glenn Villeneuve's name because of his fearless adventures and strong ties to the Alaskan wilderness. Villeneuve became a popular character on the show, captivating viewers with his survival skills and unique philosophy on living off the grid. But what happened to Glenn after he left the show? Join us as we uncover the real story behind Glenn's departure from Life Below Zero and see where his journey has taken him since then. Glenn was born on March 18, 1969 and grew up far from the busy city life. He developed a deep connection to the outdoors early on because his family lived in the woods, and this natural environment became his classroom and playground from a young age. Glenn's education was anything but normal. Instead of going to regular schools, his parents homeschooled him and taught him everything from reading and writing to basic survival skills. Living in nature, Glenn learned a lot about wildlife, weather, and other natural things. His early years were full of adventure and outdoor activities. When he was only 9, he was already climbing mountains, taking on the peaks of Mansfield, Vermont, with the skill and determination of someone much older. While most kids his age were still learning the basics, Glenn was mastering the art of mountaineering. One of the most interesting stories from Glenn's early years is about a trip he took with his parents when he was 12. Uncle Glenn and his friends set out on a big trip from Massachusetts to the Canadian border, but they didn't make it all the way. This only fueled Glenn's desire to be adventurous, and by the time he was 13, he had persuaded his mother to let him go back and finish the trip by himself, showing how determined and independent he was. Even though he later became interested in modern technologies like TV and the internet, Glenn stayed true to his wild roots. Growing up in the woods and learning how to hunt, fish, and make things prepared him for his life. Early experiences not only shaped Glenn's skills and knowledge, but they also gave him a deep love for nature and adventure. This one-of-a-kind upbringing set the stage for his later endeavors, including his famous role on Life Below Zero, where his amazing survival skills and deep connection to the wilderness captivated audiences all over the world. Glenn Villeneuve started his journey to the show Life Below Zero when he decided to leave society and become a Rocky Mountain man. He has always been interested in the wilderness and the Rocky Outback, so he decided to move into the wilderness of Alaska and embrace it. He has lived a very different life since then and eventually caught the attention of the producers of the show Life Below Zero, where he made his debut in 2013. Since then, Glenn has been a valuable addition to the cast because of the specificity of his segments, which added a realistic element to survival, while other cast members have focused on stressing different ways to live each day in these harsh conditions. Glenn had a different view on surviving. He saw it as a life stream that is always flowing instead of a series of trials that you have to face and get through in a short amount of time. This view was well received by viewers and earned him a steady fan base during his time on the show. Glenn was a part of many amazing events that showed he could stay alive in the wilderness and be at one with it at the same time. His solo trip to hunt caribou, during which he was able to get into the animal's cave, cross difficult ice, and prove his keen tracking and hunting instincts. This episode not only showed viewers how skilled he was, but also how subtle he was and how much he appreciated the land. One decision that stood out was when Glenn was attacked by a pack of wolves near his cabin. Instead of freaking out, he kept his cool and took action to protect himself within the boundaries of his territory. People may have liked the show because it showed that he was brave and could make important decisions in a situation that could have killed many others. He was also more than just someone who knew a lot about the wilderness. He was also someone who could use his skills when his life was in danger. Glenn's life in the wild was the exact opposite of the season's main idea of constantly fighting nature to stay alive. For Glenn, it wasn't about surviving or the pain, it was about living. He lived in harmony with nature, spirits, and the supernatural. For example, he taught people about sustainable living, such as how to get food by foraging, how to build sustainable houses, and how animals worked. His segments gave viewers an interesting look into a life that met people's needs and was in tune with the earth. They loved seeing him get better with each episode and liked how he showed a realistic and organized way of solving problems. I really like how Glenn, as the friendly savage, did so well on the show Life Below Zero. He captivated viewers by turning the wilderness into a romantic, fearless world that made it seem like everyone should be able to live there. Glenn Villeneuve quickly became the star of Life Below Zero because he had such a big impact and a unique view on life compared to the other characters on the show. From his first episode in season 3 to his last, Glenn's popularity with fans came from the fact that he could survive in the wild. In his segments, he could show how he learned the secrets of the wild, the laws of nature, and how to live off the land, while the others showed the grim reality and difficulties of everyday life. Glenn thought of survival in the wilderness as an ongoing process of high-level adventure. His mindset wasn't just one of survival, but of a deep appreciation for the difficulties and simple pleasures of the woods. Glenn had many performances that made him famous on the show and showed how knowledgeable and skilled he was at most things. One of these was when he went hunting for a caribou by himself and followed the animal through a rough landscape, showing the techniques he uses when he's out there. Not only was this episode a hunt, but it was also the key to understanding Glenn and his love for the land and animals in general. It showed how he could survive in the wilderness while taking care of himself and following the utmost defense to nature. Another tense scene happened when Glenn almost died while cutting wood near his cabin. Instead of freaking out, he stayed calm and tried to protect his life with his rifle tightly in his hands and courage. Glenn successfully drove off the wolves, which took a lot of courage and skill. The episode captivated viewers and made him a true wilderness man. Glenn Veen has had his fair share of conflict and controversy on Life Below Zero, with most of it centered on the show's producers and production team. While Glenn was popular and made a big contribution to the show, creative differences and his tendency to work on his own projects often caused conflict right from the start of the show. Notice that Glenn had very different ideas for his segments than the producers did. Glenn wanted to show the real way of life, of people who live in the wild, showing that life doesn't have to be a constant struggle, but can be beautiful and exciting. This was the exact opposite of what the producers wanted, who thought that showing everyday struggles and shocking events would interest viewers. Glenn wanted to tell stories about people living in harmony with nature and animals, adventure, but the producers chose the raw theme of surviving against all odds. This basic difference in creative direction remained one of the main things that the two of them argued about. Glenn often disagreed with the production team, whether it was about the creativity of the show or something else. He could be rebellious and stubborn, which didn't always work well with the strict rules and order that were needed to make TV. These disagreements were very rare, and one of the most memorable ones happened during a winter shoot. Glenn, who has always been seen as daring and rash, decided to go into the wild by himself without consulting anyone else. This sudden decision threw off the production schedule and had the crew scrambling to figure out how to keep him safe. However, Glenn's actions showed that he was a real person whose goal was to explore the world, even if it made it hard for them to get the shots they needed and caused him to fight with other cast members. The actors he worked with liked him and were interested in working with him. Alaska is a harsh environment, and conditions were often tense. At times, the cast members' lives were in the hands of the other actors. This meant that differences in hunting grounds, ways of surviving, and the ideas that guided their lives could lead to conflict. One of Glenn's strengths was that he was independent and had a specific way of doing things, which could sometimes make things difficult. These problems caused disagreements about important issues that affected the filming. On top of that, Glenn was very careless and often broke the rules and did dangerous stunts that were hard to control on set. His carelessness and obvious disregard for safety measures made him look like the perfect daredevil. For example, there were times when Glenn would go for days in the woods without anyone knowing he was there. Glenn liked to put himself in dangerous situations and take risks that other people might avoid. This made for interesting TV, but it also made people more worried about his safety. In one famous incident, Glenn tracked a wounded bear by himself, which was a dangerous plan that could have gone horribly wrong. The production team, who were already on edge because of the difficult filming conditions, found it harder and harder to deal with such unpredictable behavior. There were disagreements and problems with the cast and production team, and Glenn's rebellious nature of breaking rules and trying new things made things worse. In 2019, the producers and crew of Life Below Zero had to weigh the pros and cons of keeping Glenn on as an actor. After a lot of thought, they decided that the cons of working with Glenn outweighed the pros. Glenn's departure left a void in the cast and crew. Fans loved Glenn on the show, and his departure from Life Below Zero allowed the production team to focus on keeping everyone safe and working together, which was important for the show's success. Glenn's time on the show is still a testament to his bravery and determination, and it shows the inevitable conflicts that happen when creative visions and safety concerns collide in the harsh reality of wilderness survival. Fans were sad to see him go because they saw him as a free-spirited man who people loved living in the Alaskan wilderness. And the response from viewers was immediate and even more surprising. Glenn has learned that many of his fans liked how he told the truth about his brave life and daring spirit. It took many of his fans a moment to understand why he had to leave, and they were all disappointed. After Glenn's send-off, many of his fans took to social media to support him and say they were sad that he was leaving the show. People supported Glenn's progress and said they wanted to see him back on the screen, but the producers of the show got mixed reactions. They liked Glenn's contribution and what he brought to Life Below Zero, but they also knew it was important to make the change for the safety of the crew and the continuity of the show. In statements, the producers thanked Glenn for his time on the show and said that letting go was a painful decision. Over the years, Glenn wasn't afraid to tell his fans what was bothering him, and he took to social media and public forums to defend himself. In a lengthy status on Facebook, he made it clear that the show's producers had no plans to let him be a part of the next season, which meant that his time on the show was over. Glenn commented on the lack of communication from the production team and the lack of an explanation, claiming to have been unfairly fired from the show, as he had spent a lot of time on the show for 6 years and 85 episodes. In his podcasts and interviews, Glenn talked more about what happened that made him leave. He talked about the conflict between his desire to show the real world and the producer's desire to show drama. Glenn also talked about safety concerns, saying that they were a result of his risk-taking personality, but that they were necessary for his book of survival. The job was good for him because it gave him chances. He stayed active on social media, which let him stay in touch with his fans and share more content from his wilderness journey. His departure from Life Below Zero marked the end of an era, but also the start of a new chapter in his adventurous life, showing that Glenn Villeneuve's spirit and strength go far beyond reality TV. Since leaving Life Below Zero, Glenn Villeneuve has continued to live a full and exciting life. He has spread his interests by getting deeply involved in real estate and the stock market. Glenn's knack for making smart investments has helped him build his wealth, which has allowed him to stay financially independent while pursuing his passions. Even though he has stopped working on TV, Glenn's love for the wilderness has not changed. He still regularly ventures into the Alaskan backcountry to improve his survival skills and explore new areas. His ongoing adventures keep him connected to the outdoors. He loves rough landscapes and often talks about them with his fans on social media and podcasts. Glenn Vu's life after Life Below Zero shows how strong and flexible he is. Whether he's managing his investments, spending time with his family, or exploring the wilds of Alaska, Glenn continues to live a life marked by independence, resilience, and a deep respect for nature. His journey inspires many to appreciate the simplicity and beauty of living in harmony with nature.